So, here you go. Nice kind of warm day at like 45 degrees in my house, but I'm nice and warm because I got a good jacket. So today I want to just kind of go over algebraic manipulations. I mean, this is like what we're going to be doing a lot of with different problems you got to solve for one thing and switch and blah, blah, blah. So I just have a whole bunch of examples here, and we're going to go through them just to kind of, knock out the cobwebs and get you to know that, oh yeah, I remember how to do that. So let's start off with a simple one here. Y equals x squared, and just to make it simple, we'll always be solving for x. Well, if y equals x squared, then you got to do the same thing on both sides of the equation, and the way to get rid of that little nasty 2 is to take the square root of both sides. And when you do that, then you have x equals square root of y. Okay, now notice here, it says x equals the square root of y, even though kids like to have x on the left, like this. I am going to do both because sometimes you write the whole problem out and the x is already on the right side, and so why flip it all around? But if you feel more comfortable just having an x on the left, you can always flip it over. Okay, so let's take that one, and then how about y equals x squared plus 2? Well, now we've got a slightly different situation here, because if we just say, well, let's take the square root of both sides here, then unfortunately you can't just do that, because x squared plus 2 is a number. So instead of doing that, what you're going to have to do is get rid of that 2. So let's try that one more time. Y equals x squared plus 2. Now, let's get rid of that 2, so it's just the square by itself, subtracting 2 on both sides. So then y minus 2 equals x squared, and that would mean that we'd have x equals, and I'll flip it around here for you, the square root of y minus 2. Okay, so you just got to be a little careful about the numbers and the exponents kind of thing there. Okay, moving right along. How about x over 3 equals 4y over 5? Just a little random thing here. Well, clearly, if you want to get x by itself, just multiply both sides by 3, and then you would have those cancel out. X equals 4 times 3y equals 12y over 5. Now, what I would like you to do is stop each time I write a problem out. You solve it, and then make sure that you solve it the right way, because I always get things right. Okay, so let's continue here. Next problem is going to be 7 over x equals 5 over 7. Okay, now you write it out, you solve it. Stop the video and see what you get. Okay, well, let's see what we get here. Now, one thing we could do is cross multiply. So we have 5x equals 49. And then x would equal 49 over 5. But I think it's way easier, because remember, whatever you do on one side of the equation, do the same thing on the other. Why not just flip it? So if you flip it, then you're doing the same thing to both sides. This takes a couple of steps, but if you flip it, it's a little faster, because then it's going to be not 7 over x, but x over 7, and not 5 over 7, but 7 over 5. Okay, then, just multiply both sides by 7, and you're going to end up getting not much chalk left here. I have to make this a pretty short lecture. And then you're going to have x equals 49 over 5. Which is the same thing we got here, but by flipping both sides, I think it's a little easier. Just remember, be sure you flip both sides. Okay, next problem here. How about, oh yeah, a classic. X squared plus 6x equals negative 9. Go. Now, if you don't recognize this as familiar, just put them all on one side. And then right away you'll say, oh yeah, I've done that. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. Well, factor here, x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 0. And then x plus 3, well that would be x squared, and that would be 3x, and 3x more would be 6x, and 3 times 3 is 9. So that means x equals negative 3. Or x equals negative 3 because they're both the same. Okay, got that? Good. Okay, moving right along. A quick little review here. How about 3x cubed equals 12? Go! Well, in this case, let's get the x cubed by itself, because you can't take the cube root of the, that's just too weird. So how about divide both sides by 3, and we have x cubed equals 4. Now, unfortunately, if it said x squared equals 4, then x equals 2, right? But it says x cubed. So all you can do is say, let's take, and then you put a little 3 here to show it's a cube root instead of the square root, and do the same thing on both sides here, and then we end up getting the cube root of x cubed is going to be x, and then that's going to be the cube root of 4. And there's no like nice little whole number here. You just got to bust out your calculator and put in 4 and then the cube root thing. Okay, so that's doable. Now how about this one? Pretty similar, but not the same. 3 times x cubed plus 5 equals y. Well, again, we can't just take the cube root of this whole thing. It's too weird. But first of all, let's try to simplify by getting rid of that nasty 5 and put on the other side equals minus 5 there, so this will be y minus 5 on this side. And then you have to do it some more. You got to divide both sides by 3, and those cancel out. So finally, we can take the x cubed and then, the cube root of it equals y minus 5 over 3, and that would mean the answer would be the cube root of both sides. Don't forget that little 3 there. So x cubed equals the cubic root of y minus 5 over 3. Phew. Okay, now how about, let's switch up a little bit here and talk about percent. Okay, x equals 20% of 50. Well, isn't that the answer? Well, no, we got to figure out what 20% of 50 is. Now, a couple ways to think about this. First of all, 20%, well, 20 is 1/5 of 100. So 20% literally means 20 100ths. That's what percent, right? Per 100. 20% of 50 would be times. Well, that's 2/10 of 50. Well, 2/10 simplifies down to 1/5. Well, what's 1/5 of 50? You already knew that, right? So 1/5 of 50 is going to be 10, huh? Yeah, because that cancels, that goes, yeah, so then our final answer is going to be 10. So x equals 10. Got it. But there's the other way to do percentages that's a little bit weirder. And this seems kind of harder for people to get, so let's take the tough one here. 10% of x equals 30. So, now, what's x? Well, 10% of x means 0.1 times x, right? That's 10% is 10 hundredths and 10 hundredths is called 0.1. So 0.1x equals 30. Now this is where it gets weird because it seems like it's a small number, right? But you're not taking 10% of that. So now we have to take this thing, divide both sides by 0.1. And when we divide a number by a number less than 1, it gets much bigger. So that means those guys cancel out, and x equals 30 over 0.1. Well, 30 over 1 would be 30, right? But a tenth will go into 30 10 times more. So that would mean we'd have 300. X equals 300. Okay, now you are doing all these problems after I put them up before I show the answer, right? Otherwise, this is not going to be a good review to prove to you you know how to do this. Instead of proving, yeah, I can watch the teacher do it. No, that's not good enough. You got to do it yourself. Okay, well, let's do a couple more just for the fun of it. How about, let's take a look at two of these guys. Square root of x plus 5 equals 8. And then let's try a similar problem. The square root of x plus 5 equals 8. Now, those almost look the same. The only difference is that the 5 is under the shelter of the square root function. And here it's not. Well, which one's easier? Well, this one's a piece of cake, because all you have to do is say the square root of x equals, subtract 5 from both sides, and then you end up having 8 minus 5 is 3. So that's the square root of x, and that means if you square both sides, just to get x, we get the square root of x squared is x, and 3 squared equals 9. So let's see if that's true. The square root of 9 is 3 plus 5. 3 and 5 is 8. Okay, that looks good. But this one, let's make a better equal sign here. And we're really running low on chalk, so this would be a pretty short lecture. So in this case, we've got to, I guess to get rid of the square root thing, we have to just square the whole mess, what's underneath that thing. So that means we have to take this thing and square that side, and do the same thing the other side, square that side. So that would be the square root of x plus 5 squared. The square of x plus, this, you know what I mean. Okay, that's going to be x plus 5. And then over here it's going to be 64. So that means x would be subtract 5 from both sides. And we end up having x equals 59. Okay, so I'm hoping that having just done that, one more time here, you will have a little bit better sense and confidence that you have the sense to do the basic algebra problems that we're going to be getting into as we get into some real mathematical physics.